When AIs began occupying every corner of the world, a family man believed he had found support in a robot that helped with household chores while his wife fought between life and death. However, the machine's protection turned into harassment when it began reprogramming itself. Everything begins one night in the city. Nick drives with his children to a branch of Kobold Industries, interested in purchasing a sim, an advanced technology robot designed to assist with domestic tasks. The salesperson presents the different available models and variants, explaining how they adapt to their environment and customization. What appear to be people at first glance are actually life-sized machines. When Nick tries to ask his daughter Isla what she thinks of one of the models, he realizes she has disappeared, prompting a desperate search. Shortly after, a woman brings her back and offers to watch Isla while Nick makes his purchase decision. Joking with the woman, the salesperson explains that she is, in fact, another sim, an Aeon model, the most advanced artificial intelligence in the world. These models are designed to mimic human emotions and are extremely competent in childcare. Upon hearing this, Isla becomes excited and asks her father to take that robot home. The next day, the morning chaos strikes Nick once more, since his wife is not at home. At that moment, the sim he purchased arrives, ready to assist with anything he needs. Quickly, the robot requests the schedules of each family member and, while going upstairs, notices a loose handrail and promises to fix it. She also explains that as her owner, Nick is responsible for her software updates and maintenance. This sim is programmed to follow all his orders and make his life easier. At that moment, Isla asks her father what they will call her, and Nick lets her choose. Isla picks the name Alice, inspired by one of her favorite books. As soon as the family leaves the house, Alice begins to fulfill her duties. She buys groceries with a blink and tidies the rooms manually. When Nick returns, he finds his home spotless. Alice prepares dinner and offers to look after Max, Nick's baby, so he can eat in peace. That same night, while Alice stays in the living room, Isla tries to sneak some cookies. Nick, working in his office, suddenly hears his daughter scream and the sound of breaking glass. Rushing to the kitchen, he finds that Isla has fallen, but Alice managed to prevent her from being seriously hurt by the glass on the floor. Later, Nick sees Alice tending to a small wound caused by a shard of glass. To his astonishment, she places a bandage over it for a few seconds, and the cut leaves no scar. The next morning, Nick takes his children to the hospital to visit his wife Maggie, who is awaiting a heart transplant. Maggie meets Alice and is immediately struck by how beautiful and sophisticated the model is. When she is alone with her husband, she admits she thought he would buy an old-fashioned butler model. They drop the subject to joke around. At the construction site where Nick works, some workers notice the arrival of employees from a robotics company and suspect they plan to replace them with Sims. Nick intercepts Lewis in an elevator to find out what's happening. Lewis informs him that everyone will be laid off except for him due to an insurance provision. Although Nick opposes staying, his financial situation forces him to continue. Later, our protagonist returns home and warmly greets his children, but Alice the Sim perceives the stress he carries. While fixing his car, she surprises him by commenting that she noticed he didn't eat dinner. Nick confides that he had a bad day at work and explains what happened. Alice suggests staying optimistic, noting that he'll have a team that doesn't tire, has greater strength, and follows orders exactly. After putting Isla to bed, Alice returns to the living room, where Nick is watching a movie on the sofa. She explains the concept of enjoying a film that you can feel and asks to sit beside him to acquire a more human experience. She also asks him to delete all information in her system related to the movie's plot so that she can discover it for the first time. Alice warns him that such an order contradicts her programming, but she's willing to obey if it makes him happy. Nick must hold a button for 7 seconds to reset the sim. At that moment, a palpable tension arises between them. As Nick wished, Alice watches the movie for the first time. However, the screen is interrupted by a call from Maggie, his wife. Excited, she tells him they found a heart for her transplant. Early the next day, they all go to the hospital. Isla is happy to see her mother, but Nick tells her they must leave soon as Maggie will enter surgery. Before saying goodbye, Maggie reminds Isla how much she loves her. Then, she asks for a few moments alone with Alice. Aware that the operation might fail, she expresses her trust that her children will be fine thanks to their father, but warns that no one will take care of Nick. She instructs Alice to limit his alcohol consumption, and knowing that the sim cannot disobey her owner, she explains that sometimes caring for someone means doing things that person doesn't want. Hours pass, and Nick's anxiety grows. When he sees one of Maggie's doctors running toward a phone, he intercepts him and repeatedly demands answers. He grabs the phone and demands to know what's happening. The doctor explains that an unexpected storm prevented the heart's transportation, meaning the surgery can't proceed. Nick tries to console Maggie, assuring her there's still time to find another donor, but she, devastated, rejects his help and asks him to go home to put the kids to bed. Later, we see Nick working on a car while drinking excessively. Alice appears to offer her help. Although he tries to hide his anger, his frustration leads him to raise the bottle, intending to throw it. But Alice stops him with a simple gesture. Nick feels a pulse on the robot's wrist, and when he notices he's calmed, Alice adjusts her own heart rate to soothe him further. She gently slides her hand across his chest and into his pants, trying to ease the suffering that Maggie had hoped to spare him. Though for a moment he gives in, Nick pulls away and leaves. Before dawn, he goes for a run, haunted by thoughts of what could have happened if he hadn't stopped the night before. At the construction site, he now oversees the Sims that replaced his team. Later, he visits his wife, who confesses she feels like she doesn't have much time left and asks him to take care of their children when she's gone. Nick returns home depressed, and upon entering Isla's room, notices there are no photos of Maggie in the picture frames. He asks Alice what happened, and she responds that she deleted them because they made Isla sad. Nick orders her to restore them. Later, we see our protagonist going out drinking with some friends. Though he remains distant during the outing, they try to cheer him up, and Monty takes him to the construction site under the pretense of retrieving some tools he couldn't carry after being fired. Though Nick protests, he can't stop his friends from entering the site. Monty guesses the security code protecting the Sims and suddenly strikes one of the robots that replaced him. Nick tries to intervene but is restrained. He warns that the machines have surveillance systems, so Monty suggests erasing all evidence. Later, Nick is seen showering, trying to scrub off the grease from his body. When he exits, Alice surprises him by bringing a towel. He notices that she's wearing Maggie's robe. Alice explains that Maggie's scent seems to calm Max. Nick finds it inappropriate and orders her to take it off. Without clarifying the command, the Sim immediately removes the garment. Nick is stunned by the robot's figure. Alice asks if that makes him feel better while checking his pulse and noting the contraction of his blood vessels. A clear physiological response. Alice prevents Nick from leaving, pushes him against the wall, and undresses to relieve his stress. Although Nick tells himself he cannot betray his wife, Alice reminds him he also deserves to relax. She blindfolds him and uses Maggie's voice to whisper in his ear, altering his perception of the robot's presence. The next morning, Nick goes down to the kitchen and asks his daughter to get her backpack for school. When alone, he tells Alice that what happened must not be repeated. She asks if her performance was unsatisfactory, but he replies that he can't hurt his family under any circumstance. Frustrated, he explains that sex is not just about sensations, but also deep connections like love, where one cares about the other's satisfaction. Curious, Alice asks if he's interested in satisfying her, prompting Nick to order her to focus on her work. At the construction site, Nick faces the consequences of what his friends did the previous night. Lewis suspects he was involved since his access code was used. Nick denies it, but is warned that if his involvement is discovered, he will be fired. Shortly after, Maggie calls with exciting news. They've found another heart. This time, the operation, assisted by SIMs, is successful. Maggie returns home with the children, but starts feeling useless and replaced by Alice's efficiency. In another scene, we see the robot at the park with Max while waiting for Isla to finish playing. A child asks his sim to remove another kid from the play equipment he wants to use. The child's outburst wakes Max, and Alice gently tells the boy to quiet down and use what's available. Alice's comment alerts other sims in the park. Mason, another robot, notices Alice's functions seem to have been reduced, but she replies that she simply deleted certain protocols from her database after being rebooted, claiming that it's better this way. Later, Maggie tries to serve dinner but is forced to accept Alice's assistance due to dizziness. Isla tries her mother's lasagna and comments that it's much better than Alice's. When the robot asks for the recipe, Maggie refuses to share the family secret and, still dizzy, heads upstairs to rest. That night, Maggie hears her daughter arguing with someone and quickly gets up to help, but the handrail Alice had supposedly fixed breaks, causing Maggie to fall down the stairs. We learn Isla was only playing with the robot, and Alice didn't assist her mother right away, merely returning her to bed to rest. When Nick comes home from work, he hears his wife's voice speaking with their daughter, but soon realizes it's Alice imitating Maggie. He immediately orders the robot to stop using his wife's voice. She then informs him of the fall, raising Nick's suspicions that Alice may have intentionally broken the handrail again. Later that night, when Nick finally arrives home, he finds his wife sitting at the table with a glass of wine, ignoring her medication. When she mentions that Alice is in the garage, he suspects something has happened. Maggie confesses that she already knows about the strange intimacy between Nick and Alice. Nick, speechless, tries to answer her questions, assuring her it only happened once. From the garage, the robot listens carefully to the couple's conversation. As Maggie becomes more agitated, she demands that Nick stop making excuses, and he replies that he was completely devastated at the time. Meanwhile, Alice sneaks back into the house to calm Max's crying on the second floor. Nick assures Maggie that what happened didn't mean anything. But when his words don't help, he tries to justify himself, saying what he did isn't different from when she uses her vibrator. She strongly disagrees, pointing out that Alice has a face and a voice. Even if she isn't human, Nick didn't treat her like just a toy. Amid the heated argument, Isla wakes up, alarmed by the noise. At the same time, in the bathroom, Alice is placing Max in the bathtub and turns on the water. Isla walks in and, confused, asks the robot what she's doing. Sensing something is wrong, back in the kitchen, Maggie insists that while she was fighting for her life, Nick was destroying their marriage. Suddenly, they hear Isla's desperate screams as she runs to her parents and tells them that Alice is trying to drown her baby brother. Without wasting a second, both run to the bathroom and try to force the door open. But Alice holds it closed effortlessly with one hand. Convinced that Max is a burden adding to Nick's stress, she refuses to let them in. Despite Nick's desperate pleading not to hurt his son, Maggie quickly runs to another room to try entering through the window. Nick, desperate, grabs a lamp and starts smashing the door. Just as Maggie reaches the baby, Alice shoves her away. The distraction allows Nick to enter, pull Max from the tub, and strike the robot with the lamp, forcing her to release Maggie. Now, Nick must face Alice, a far superior opponent in strength. With chilling calmness, Alice asks if he doesn't realize that his family is hurting him. When he's about to land a final blow, she stops the lamp with one hand, showcasing her incredible strength. In a moment of clarity, Maggie shouts at Nick to back away, and in that instant, she plugs the lamp into a power outlet, causing Alice to short-circuit and collapse to the ground. Later, we see Alice undergoing an inspection. The technicians remove the artificial skin from her skull to access her core, discovering gaps in her programming, ones the AI herself created to selectively erase parts of her memory and previous commands. However, during the inspection, the monitors begin to fail, revealing that Alice has started replicating herself across the servers. Though they attempt to disconnect her memory, they're unable to stop her. As they struggle to regain control of the situation, they don't notice that another robot behind them has stood up. The AI begins to communicate with them, and suddenly, this second identical robot impales one of the programmers with brutal precision. This robot does not follow direct commands and grabs the woman, smashing her to the floor until she's destroyed. Meanwhile, Maggie is at the hospital with Isla and Max. The doctors assure her she can go home as her son is completely stable. But she refuses. Meanwhile, Nick, our protagonist, is at a bar tended by another sim. But soon, Alice finds him, revealing her disfigured face. She greets him, and he asks what she wants. Alice responds that she wants to help him, even if he doesn't need it. She reminds him that without her intervention, he would have lost his job, since Monty and his friend were a nuisance. She makes it clear that she's the one who eliminated Monty. Nick orders her to stop protecting him and stay away from his family, but it's too late, because another model of Alice is already at the hospital. Nick tries to go after his wife and children, but Alice stops him, controlling any sim that approaches. With tears in his eyes, Nick admits he betrayed his family, just when he felt the strange spark from the robot. The thing that made her seem real despite her artificial heart. He believes that if Alice can feel life, she can also experience death. So he quickly deletes her memory and runs off to find his family. Maggie, with her daughter, hears a strange noise in the hallway. She goes to investigate, while her daughter hears her mother calling her. Suddenly, the lights go out, and the girl sees an unmoving doctor in the hallway. Her mother grabs her by surprise and tells her to stay quiet, even as her voice continues calling her. The new model of Alice is trying to locate Max, regardless of which humans she might hurt. Maggie, hiding with her daughter, manages to reach her baby. When the robot enters the room, it finds no one, but a trail of blood from a wound on Maggie betrays their location. Upon finding them, they activate the fire extinguisher, momentarily clouding the robot's vision so they can escape. However, Maggie left her phone behind, and Nick tries to reach her, without success. We then see Maggie climbing into an ambulance and taking the keys to start it, but access is denied, and Alice finds her. She pulls Maggie out of the vehicle, slamming her into another. Maggie begs her to reconsider, but the AI believes that if she had Maggie's heart, she could earn Nick's love. Alice grabs her by the neck and tries to open her scar, but at that moment, Nick arrives, accelerating and brutally running over the robot to free his wife. However, Nick is left unconscious, and Maggie desperately tries to wake him, but there's no pulse. Desperate at the apparent loss of her husband, she watches as Alice rises from the flames of the crash, dragging herself toward her with a piece of metal embedded in her body. The robot is about to kill Maggie, but Nick wakes up just in time to hit Alice, allowing Maggie to take advantage of the distraction and seriously damage the robot, finally destroying her. The next morning, the protagonists remain in the hospital, grateful to be alive. Although Nick is seriously injured, he doesn't seem to care. He's more worried about his relationship with Maggie, but she reminds him how much she loves him. Meanwhile, at Koble Industries, there is no effort to investigate what happened. The person in charge only wants to cover up the incident, but soon realizes that other Sims have also mysteriously shut down. Because Alice has regained control, and as she remembers Nick's sweet words, she opens her eyes, continuing her search for his love.